Hi, welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode 333. It's a classic episode with Ben, Anissa, and Vic all catching up, answering some listener questions. Things like how to have kids in the shop and keep things safe, joining really long boards. I love that in nearly every episode, an article or two gets brought up, a video workshop maybe. The way to have access to all of that is with one of our unlimited memberships. Not only do you get the print subscription, but you're able to access our online archive, view video workshops, unlimited amount of views on articles. There's more woodworking information on there than I can digest. Let's dive into the episode.
I wanted to tell people about I actually did what I said I was going to do.
Which is what?
Big.
What'd
you
you
knew
say?
I was gonna stiffen up my workbench, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I did it, and it's wonderful. And then it just snowballed. It got wildly out of hand. And I had like 10 days off or something like that, and I got nothing done because I tore my shop apart and put a new floor down.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
why your
awesome.
shop looks so tidy.
Yeah, because I just wanted to shut Vic up. But yeah, it is. So I decided, okay, I did the workbench. Now the foam mats are bothering me. So I'm going to go get a couple of stall mats, like horse stall mats. They're 4 foot by 6 foot, 3/4 inch thick rubber.
Do they stink?
They stunk for a bit. Yeah. It smelled like
Okay.
tire in here. It really did. Yeah. Not going to
Okay.
lie.
Did you get them from Tractor Supply or somewhere
No,
like
I don't
that?
shop at Tractor Supply.
Okay.
I got them from Agway in Danbury.
Oh, all of our Agways are gone.
Oh, I like Agways.
Me too.
So I got 2 of them and I put them down. I was like, these are really nice. I was like, wouldn't it be nice if it kind of extended over that way and extended over that? And then was like, okay, I'll go get 2 more. And then all of a sudden, I decided that I needed like wood flooring under my seating area. And then I was like, wait a minute, it would be nice if it was insulated a little bit. And then I started doing the math and it totally got out of hand and I had to back off. But what I wound up doing, and this is why I want to tell like the audience, because I think I stumbled into something brilliant.
So is this the part where you get to the point?
Oh God. So one problem with having a nice shop is the initial burst of money that it takes, right? Having like the nice insulated wood floor or whatever, even stall mats. And so I did what so many people do, and I went to Harbor Freight and got like the foam interlocking tiles. And over the past couple of years, though, they've kind of degraded and they shrink.
Yeah,
and they no longer line
compress,
up.
Yeah.
But like even the width, shrinks, and they stopped lining up.
Huh.
And it was really a drag because it made vacuuming almost impossible. And then I just stopped doing it. And then I started losing screws, and I started losing important screws, and it was starting to become a real problem for me. So what I eventually did was I wanted to put insulation under the OSB floor that I was putting down, but I couldn't afford it and I didn't want to like do the thing. So I just left the foam mats down, and that's going to give a break, like an air seal break, or not an air seal, but an air break between the wood floor and the concrete. It's a little bit of insulation. So if you're hesitant to get like the interlocking foam tiles because eventually you want to blanc, just get them. Get them, make your life nicer for a while. It buys you some time, and then you can use that as a layer of junky insulation under the floor you're going to eventually put down.
All right.
I was pretty pleased with it. It's made it so much more comfortable in here. But it was like I was really sitting there because, foam insulation's not cheap at all.
No.
So but I wanted something. I wanted some sort of thermal break between the concrete and the plywood. So
What I did was I bought you can buy those same sort of 2x2 foam tiles, but if you buy them at like a fitness depot place,
mhm.
they're much thicker and the rubber is much heftier because it's designed to go under
A
like
lot of
huge
weight.
gym equipment and
Machinery,
all that
yeah.
other stuff. So it doesn't like compress and it doesn't leave marks. And so I tried that out and that worked out really well. And I think it was about, I think I worked it out. It was about $3 or $4 per square foot.
So that's, yeah. That's definitely a step up though, because I think like the Harbor Freight ones, I just bought a pack for like $7, a pack of 4 for like $7 or $8, $10 every time I went, and I just slowly foamed up my floor, over months.
Right.
How is it rolling stuff around on that stuff? I roll my planer and my jointer around a bunch.
The gym floor stuff works well.
It does.
You roll
I
your
move my
jointer
bandsaw, I
around?
move my
Huh?
You roll your
Don't
jointer
start.
around?
Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
if I need like more in-feed or out-feed.
Yeah.
Anissa, you have that big Powermatic, don't you?
The planer? Yeah, I roll that thing around
no,
too.
the jointer. What do you have?
No, my jointer's a Grizzly. It's not humongous, but
okay.
Sometimes if it's something super long, I have to open my door and start outside and then roll the jointer closer to the door so that that's only happened a couple times, but
it's a necessity.
Yeah. And sometimes like the way I have it situated, I might have to move it out because it's, I have those two on rollers, and then my miter saw's on a rolling top too, or rolling station. Sorry, cat distracting me. But we're also getting into a little bit of the one question.
Should we jump in? Should we? Huh?
You mean this was leading somewhere?
No, we were just saying, hey.
There was a method for the madness.
All right.
This question is from John. How would you go about flattening very long, 100+ inches in length by hand? I'm pretty good at getting boards about 4 foot long flat, but these longer boards are giving me fits. I just can't seem to get that twist out. The darn things don't even fully fit on my workbench. These are for a fairly substantial tabletop, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get things as flat as possible before glue up to minimize the work that needs to be done afterwards, when the top will be very difficult to move around. The strategy that seems to be working best is to work in short, overlapping 18 to 24-inch sections. I was wondering if anyone had tips and tricks short of shelling out for a long bed joiner to get the job done.
So the long bed jointer isn't really going to be the answer to my mind, because just because it's got long beds doesn't mean it's going to get flat. If you're not putting pressure in the right spots as it's going over, your beds could be this long and it wouldn't matter. So he's got the right idea though. Like if you're working on bigger pieces, to like work in sections. But then the other thing that I found is really helpful when you're working on longer pieces with hand tools is that if you take 5 or 10 minutes and create a bit of a topographical map of the board using straight edges and using winding sticks, so that you can say, okay, this area is high, this area is low, and sort of like what I do is I use pencil mark, like a soft, sort of 6B type pencil, to put the areas that have to come off, so the high areas, and then localize. Don't depend on the plain sole, don't depend on those sorts of things. Just go after the high areas and then go from there. But to be quite honest, what I usually do is with a place where I buy the wood, I have them lay it up for me. If it's going to be something like a big dining table or something like that, they've got the machinery to do it. And then they finish it off with this fancy machine that is a thickness planer, two two belt sanders and orbital sanders at the end. And so the thing comes out like, oh, it's amazing. You don't even have to finish sand it.
Each board?
No. Like if I
Okay.
say, listen, I want a walnut top 42 inches by 7 feet, they'll lay that up for me, glue it up, and then put it through this miracle machine that just does it. It just, and like when you consider, like, I probably pay $300 to $500 for that to happen on top of the price of the wood, but it's worth the $300 to $500.
So my answer would be I would not be doing it by hand unless I absolutely had to.
Agreed.
And so I agree pretty much with everything Vic said, that it's not about having the longer bed on the jointer, because you can just add supports on the end to help you support the board up so that you can feed it steadily and put pressure where it belongs on either side. But I was also going to say farm it out. I was going to say farm it out separately, so that you just got each board finished flat and then you put them together grain-wise the way you wanted them. But I forgot that you can get everything glued up and surfaced somewhere else too, because you have to weigh out the time that is taking you to flatten that board by hand as opposed to the amount that you're going to pay somebody else to do something. You could be working on another part of that table if this is a commission, or even if it's not. I mean, I wouldn't be trying to do that by hand.
So, my dining room table, I had it, I glued it up and I took it to a wide belt sander at a lumberyard, I think it was $40. It was like the best money I'd ever spent, you know? But I was able to get the boards individually flat and glued up and, whatever. It needed working as a whole. I agree. That said, these might be the boards John has, and John might not have the funds to do that stuff, which totally been there. So I'm just wondering if this was like the declared situation, I have these boards, I have to get this done, I have to work it by hand. I don't think there's a good answer of working it by hand without a workbench that's going to be the size of the boards, right, Vic? Like, isn't that kind of just the baseline necessary thing? Would you maybe like build up like an MDF surface or something that you could work these large boards on? Would you work them individually and get them in the wheelhouse, get them together, and then work them as a unit? I
think like you really just need to get one side flat, and then you can presumably depend on your thickness planer to bring that into parallel. But so yes, technically it would be best if you had a big honking workbench. But again, like we all have sort of limitations as to what we can build in our individual shops. And so, when I was in a one-car garage, it's like, okay, well, no dining tables and no queen-size beds because it's just not going to work, And so, to sort of take the analogy a little further, it's like, well, it's kind of hard to turn wooden legs if you don't have a lathe. And so, like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's nice to like want to be able to do all the projects, but the reality is that if you have a short workbench and you're trying to flatten boards by hand and they're in the plus 100 inches long, that's a tall order. Because really the hand planes depend on having a bit of a flat surface that you can work on, and then you've got to shim everything so that it's not going anywhere. I mean, you could try to build like a torsion box situation that you could then because I remember like a couple episodes or something ago, you guys were talking about like planer sleds and stuff.
Mhm.
Like you could make a monster planing sled, right? And then that way you could shim everything up and then send it through a thickness planer. I would be doing that before I would be doing it by hand.
Would you? Okay. That's
Oh yeah,
all right.
because I mean the hand thing is going to be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Because there is no good way to hold that board efficiently. There's no good way to like, I mean, you can work it in sections like we were saying earlier, but man, it's tough.
Yeah.
And it just might be one of those things where it's like if you need 100-inch long pieces of wood, it's not something that most, I would say, most shops. Like Ben, could you do 100 inches long in your shop?
Oh no. I've got a very short bed joiner, 100 inches long. I'm not gonna lie. We've got, a long bed, 12-inch grizzly at the fine. That would not be a trivial task, would it, Anissa?
But even if you had it, even if you had access to that 12-inch jointer with extremely long beds and all that other stuff, the reality is that getting a flat surface on a board that long is just because you have the capacity doesn't mean you're going to get it, because there's still like, you don't just sort of put two paddles down on this giant board and send it across. Like you have to know what you're doing.
There's
you
skill
have to
involved?
What's that?
There's skill involved? I thought you just threw money at the problem.
Well, that's what I do, but I'm fortunate to be able to do that, and I don't build dining tables specifically for that. Like you look at people who do build dining tables, they are set up to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
So here's a thought. Like, what if we have a bunch of articles on flattening big slabs of big tabletop slabs.
Yeah.
Like solid boards.
Like the Offerman sled.
Right.
Thingy.
Right. So you're going
sled
on top of it with a router. That's what he did, right?
Yeah.
So there are a few articles that have that system. Why not work on that? Glue all the boards up, work that way. Glue all the boards up first and tackle it as one big wide slab, because I'm assuming that if this is a 1,200 inches is how many feet?
Over like 96.
9 feet plus?
8
close to
feet
9 feet.
is 96 inches. So.
So I'm assuming it's at least 4 feet wide, right? Probably.
Okay.
So I would treat it, I would glue it up probably if I were doing this. I would glue it up. Depending on how off these boards are, I would biscuit join them together, glue them up, and then treat them as one big wide board, one big slab.
The other thing that's a bit concerning would be I agree with the direction you're going in, Anissa, because like you can kind of deal with it with another sort of tool set in the next step. But then what happens if like getting 100-inch long straight edge is no trivial thing either. And so then what happens if because I've seen it where you get like twist happening on the edge, and then you're trying to glue that up, or let's say you do get them straight, but then each one is off by a degree, which is totally can happen. And then now you end up with like a little bit of a cup situation or an undulation situation. And then you're removing all this material. Like you're going to start with 8/4 and end up with a 3/4 inch top, which would not be cool either. So I don't know. Sometimes there's just limitations into what we can do, That's the lesson, I think.
I mean, I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was assuming that we're not talking about really wonky boards that this person that John is trying to put together. Or is this Rob? No, this is John.
John.
That there's some amount of uniformity to these boards, but
one would hope, yeah.
Yeah. So I was going kind of from that base, which maybe I shouldn't have, but yeah, if he's trying to flatten, straighten out really wonky boards, then I kind of feel like definitely farm that thing out or get new boards.
So I mean, this is one of those situations where I think if John is a hobbyist, this is going to be entirely no fun and make you miserable as a hobbyist woodworker. It's probably if it's available, it's probably worth saving the money to get these processed by somebody else or something. If John is not a hobbyist and a pro, you are well beyond what you need to be charging to make somebody do this. Just pass that cost on, like there's no way. We don't have a good answer for John, do we?
Well, and I was even able to work with companies where like I go in, I pick the material, I spend the time flipping those giant 8/4 boards around to get the grain picture I'm after, and then I put a big crayon mark on there to indicate how I want it to go together, and then they do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's totally worth it, because I've tried to do that. I've tried to make I even struggled with a 6-foot dining table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like the boards are heavy, they're cumbersome. It just I'm just going to make little ring boxes forever.
That was the one thing you said that initially when you talked about having somebody else put the boards together and run them through for you, I would want control over the grain.
Oh, so for sure.
I'm glad you followed up on that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I was like, wait,
just
what?
Let them do it. Although I've been to, there's a lumber yard here that they sell pre-laminated. So like you can get, for example, like a pine 2-inch thick top that is like 40 inches by 8 feet. And they've done the layup and it's pretty good. Like they've got woodworkers there who know how it should go. But you're right, I wouldn't be able to let go of that control.
Yeah. So
all right. This next question is from Jay Reed, and they ask, there are several of your regular guests that teach on a regular basis. I have a niece begging me to take her 12-year-old son under my wing and teach him some woodworking. I taught one adult ComEd class. I couldn't make a community education class maybe years ago, and was less than inspired. They all just wanted to use the school shop for their own projects. Yeah. My shop is a one-man shop. I don't borrow tools. I don't have much bench space, and I don't allow friends to use the shop. They ask only once. I must be good at diplomacy. They are still friends. I worry about the safety of a 12-year-old. He is a really good young man, but everything in my shop can draw blood. I don't know how to respond to my niece's request. I'm a firm believer in passing on my knowledge or expertise one might have to the next generation. I haven't said yes or no yet. I wouldn't know where to start. Any ideas, thoughts, or experiences from your group of experts would be greatly appreciated. Anissa.
Ben. So, yeah, I've been thinking about this question a lot the last couple days. And I agree, the shop is a very scary place for somebody, for a kid up all the way up through adults who don't know how to use the machines, who don't have an awareness of how dangerous these things can be. But at the same time, I love having my kids in the shop. And when they're into doing something, I run while their interest level is there, you should take advantage of it, because it can change so quickly. That said, my kids still have only ever used the bandsaw. Is the only, I'll let them use a drill, obviously, because that's pretty low stakes. But They've only used the bandsaw as far as the machines. I don't think, maybe now my kids are 14 and 15, I might start talking with them about the table saw, and maybe letting them do something. Yeah, I don't even know if I would want my kids on the table saw yet. But there are so many hand tool projects that you can do with kids. And a lot, especially at 12, I think a lot of the magic for a 12-year-old will be less in cutting the joinery as much as assembling things. So you can use hand planes to cut joinery. You can use hand saws to cut joinery. You can
use nails.
You can use nails to assemble. You can also pre-cut some things and make it like a kit and just have them do chisel work. They love planes and spoke shaves and just tailoring your projects around stuff that doesn't have them on the machines at the start. I know my kids, even in their shop classes in the high school, they haven't really gotten on a lot of the major machines yet still. And they have a great shop teacher, and he's just kind of working these kids up. And as he gets to know the kids more and understands what each kid is capable of, I think then they start moving in. And then I think kids start dropping tech class at a certain point, and the kids who are there are really the responsible and interested ones.
Yeah.
I'd also just caution against, not against it, but just talk about the caution of having more than one kid in the shop at the same time, because kids together get goofy, and that's, they can start feeding off each other's goofiness. And
Ben and I get together and it gets goofy.
Right? Yeah, I guess adults get goofy together.
And we're
too,
adults.
Right?
That's why we only listen to music when we were in the shop together.
That's right. We didn't do anything else.
Yeah. So that's I think definitely try it out, but there are ways to just incrementally work up to things that are a little bit riskier. And there are so many projects and so many ways of keeping it to like very simple methods and very safe methods. But I agree. You should be cautious about the way he brings people into the shop and introduces them to woodworking.
Vic, as someone, you've had a child, and as someone who's taught a lot of classes, what's your take?
So, first of all, when it's your own kid, you know them very well, and so you know what
point.
you know how attentive they are, you know how not attentive they are, you know, you can see the cues when they start like not focusing,
and they know you.
Yeah.
Right. And like you can, as a parent, you can deal with lapses in attention or whatever differently than if it's somebody else's kid. Right. And so I'm not saying that Alex was beaten in the shop or anything like that, but beaten's a strong word. But no, she's never been beaten. But the reality is that like there needs to be some sort of key things. And I've taught kids like where parents have called me up like out of the blue because I teach woodworking, and it's like, would you consider teaching my 16-year-old son or my whatever? And so I learned a lesson the first time. I had a mother contact me, and she said she has like a 12 and a 13-year-old boy, and they're interested in making things, and would I consider teaching them? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's take a look at how this goes. And so, and my insurance from my company, like, was aware, right? Okay. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind, even though it's family. I mean, families can get weird. And so these two boys were great as long as their mother was in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as that lady left the shop, they turned into monsters. And I didn't have the ability to like crack two heads together and say, hey, knock it off.
Yeah.
Right. So I terminated that right away, because like if people aren't listening, I also assess, like, I do like a little trial run, and I bring them in and I'm chatting with them and I'm talking to them about it, because sometimes it's not them that has the interest. Sometimes it's the parent wants them to have an interest,
Mm-hmm.
which is not cool, because it's like they're just trying to keep them, from being at the corner store smoking cigarettes with their friends at 11 p.m. So, which I was that kid, and look how well I turned out. But the reality is that, like, I put them through a little bit of a trial, and then I'm paying attention to how well they pay attention,
Yeah.
right? And if they can't hold focus for like 30 seconds, it's like, no, this isn't going to work, unfortunately, because I need that ability. Now, all that said, I've successfully taught a number of young students who were very focused and were very, like, interested in learning how to do woodworking and all that other kind of stuff. And so there have been success stories. I just think you have to be very careful, as Anissa was saying, um, about who you let into your shop. And if you feel unsafe with them in there, then don't ignore that for the
Mhm.
sake of keeping somebody happy. Like, speak up and say, listen, I don't know that this is the right time for them. And go from there.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
go ahead. Sorry, Ben.
no, I was just gonna say there's a huge distinction that you two have made, though, between your kids and somebody else's kids. And I think that I would have a harder to, like, I know exactly what my kid's going to do, and my kid knows the rules of the shop. He's grown up in here. Just last night, he broke one of the rules. He picked up, and it was a piece of camera equipment. It was like a little whatever. He picked something up and turned the button on. I said, "You're not allowed to push buttons." And Ben Brunick, Chalkstone Woodworking, a long time ago, and he said we did like a kids in the shop video and blog post and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
one of the rules that I got from Ben was no press. You're not allowed to press any buttons, right? Because if you press a button, something can turn on, and if you don't know what that thing does, you should not be pressing that button. So that's always been one of our, like, ground rules.
Mm.
And like, he's, wildly, for his age and everything, he's very capable of using the tools in here. And he'll jump on the drill press. Drill press is a great
Oh,
tool for
yeah,
kids.
you're right. Drill press. My kids can do the drill press too.
I mean, there's definitely things, to cover, clamping pieces, small,
Yeah.
All that stuff. But he works on the bandsaw. He loves the disc sander, because you can shape something, you can do a thing with it, and it's an instant gratification thing. So that's a tool that you could also really mess yourself up with too, so, like, whenever he is introduced to a new tool, we sit down and, like, I teach him the physics of that tool. He knows, like, where the pressure of the bandsaw blade is putting, where it's going. In the disc sander, he knows, like, okay, this side of the disc, it's gonna, and I might even, take a little piece and show him how it's flipping,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really good example, or it's a really good time to teach kids about physics, honestly. Like, this is happening because this is happening, and they get it. Or my kid at least gets it. But like you said, if it was somebody else's kid, they don't have it ingrained in them since they were 4 years old. Don't push any buttons,
Right.
And, like, the moment he pushed a button, I said, dude, he knew. He was like, oh yeah, like he knew, so, like, he knows me. I can say dude, and he knows what his reaction should be to that. But again, yeah, this 12-year-old, if they're interested, do what you can. I think Anissa, like, nailed it. Like, get some like parts together. Just see, it's yeah, attention spans are going to be different. maybe like Vic says, maybe this young person's parent needs to be in the room with you, you know? And if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But I really, really love the idea of getting young people in the shop. Anissa's kids have shop class. My kid has a shop class where they do, you know, like he had a test on the drill press, you know. But a lot of that is going to wind up being these days CAD work and 3D printing. And you know, I'm a fan, right? But I'm also a fan of being able to, you know, chuck up a drill bit in a hand drill, you know, and knowing how to use that and everything. It's like Rozzy can do that all day long, you know? So this 12-year-old might not get that anywhere else. So
yeah,
if there is in fact an interest there, run with it if you can.
Yeah, what you just said about your kid having just kind of this innate sense at this point because he's been around it so long. You're right. Our kids are lucky in that way because I realized, like, as soon as you said that, I realized when my kids come in the shop, if I'm working on a machine, they just stand by the door and they wait for me to turn that machine off.
And there's plenty of 60-year-olds who doesn't know that,
right?
You know?
Yeah. And so, I mean, that goes back to what I said about the same thing that you just said, basically, is that a lot of people just don't have that. They just don't have the familiarity with being in a shop. And so that kind of has to build. It takes a while too.
Yeah.
But so I'm getting a little off topic, but this question actually brought up another question for me, where they said, I don't allow friends to use the shop. I'm wondering that about you guys. There are like 3 people that I'll let in my shop and who I will let borrow tools and who I know I can borrow their tools. But that's pretty much it. Do you guys let anybody else use your shops?
I would let you two. I would let, you know, if Vic was down yonder and wanted to use my shop, sure, whatever. I'm in a weird position where most of my friends are either woodworkers,
right,
or don't live anywhere near me, you know? But if it was a neighbor, no. I don't, would you, Vic?
Again, I'm in the same boat as you guys where like we know so many woodworkers.
right.
Like, I mean, when I visited Anissa, like I got to like walk around her shop, but like she made me keep my hands in my pockets and she's like, don't touch any buttons. Like, but it's one of those things where it's like if I trust that woodworker, like if I know that person and they're a friend of mine and all that, of course, like I've had lots of people woodworking in the shop with me and like, you know, working on a project together and or whatever. And I don't feel the need to micromanage or whatever. But I mean, to have like a neighbor, like even if you know them really well, like Anissa, we had breakfast a couple of times with one of your town mates. I
Yes,
won't say his name, right?
he's one of he's one of the people I let use my shop.
Okay, so
yeah.
that's like a good example because he's got a background in like
he's a
building and
contractor.
making, so like he knows what he's doing, but like not everybody has that, and you can't just like assume it's no different than having anybody in your shop. Like I have lots of people coming into my shop to learn how to woodwork, and it's like my assumption is you know nothing until you
Yeah.
prove to me that you know something. And then maybe I'll turn my back on you while you're making a cut on the bandsaw. Right? But until then, oh no. No, you just
and I'll even go out there and say my brother grew up in the same environment as me. He still makes me nervous working in his own shop. And there was a point where he has a like an old unisaw, and I sold my unisaw, and the guy didn't want the fancy guard that I had bought for it. And so I said, cool, I'll give you a discount. And I gave it or sold it to my brother or something like that. But I told him, I was like, you're not allowed to use your table saw right now. until we install this guard, because like the poetry of like having the guard, but you cutting yourself, you having an issue with it was too, I was just, and he was like, oh, okay. And he trusted me enough to know, yeah, let's not screw around with this, you know? So I just don't think that I trust anyone, including my brother, until I give them, because I know how stupid I was when I first started using a table saw. I know the dumb things I did, and I had the same raising as he did. So I know he might not have had that extra little bit of Pekovich gnawing away at him, telling him you should use an L fence here or whatever, you know? And like, that's an important thing, I think. So I don't know.
I wouldn't let Pekovich in my shop. I don't trust that guy.
It's too intimidating. All right.
He's been in my shop and tuned up my bandsaw. I was like, yeah, you can come in here and tune up my bandsaw anytime you want. Because he went to use the bandsaw. He was like, what's happening here? It was great.
I think you offered me the opportunity to tidy your shop while I was there.
Oh, I was probably just joking. It's a
I
mess.
almost did it.
No,
Vic wanted to.
I offered you the chance to help my neighbor pull in his Inca bandsaw. Remember?
You said Inca.
Yeah, my neighbor, I was walking to the post office the one day, and my neighbor had in his driveway, he had this very cool Inca bandsaw, which I have never seen an Inca bandsaw before.
One of the 3-wheel ones.
One of the 3-wheel ones?
Yeah.
Those are kind of cool too, though.
Yeah.
Thing.
He's set up right next to the post office, and you know, I went over and I was just staring at it, and he came out and he had it in a couple pieces. He had gotten a great deal on it at a restore, a Habitat restore, like a great deal. And I ran away before he tried to get me to help him carry it into his basement.
Run away. All right, do we want to take a break?
Sure.
Next month, we're releasing our newest e-learning course, which is Identifying Wood with Randy Wilkinson. This is something I'm very interested in. He references Bruce Hoadley's text to help you differentiate between different species of wood, and is great for any woodworker to know, especially if you're a wood science nerd like me. Go to courses.findwoodworking.com to look at all of our available on-demand courses and sign up for his class.
Stop.
Can we have a break from the break?
No, that is how we're coming back. And I just had, okay. That is how we're coming back. The break from the break. We are going to talk about what are we going to talk about?
Smooth
I have an
move,
all-time favorite tool of all time.
Me too.
Oh,
me
I do
too.
too.
Me too.
We're matching.
Hopefully not. Hopefully it's not the same tool. We should have talked
right.
about this beforehand.
Who wants to go first? Rock, paper, scissors.
Ooh, ready?
You and Vic. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
1, 2.
Oh, that was both scissors.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh, that's not fair. There's a delay. All right, this is not working at all.
One
Go
more
ahead,
time. Just
Anissa.
one more time.
Anissa goes.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so the last shoot that I went on was to Kentucky, and I was making a coffer or a little chest with Chris Schwartz, and I managed to score one of the engraving cutters that he was using to decorate the coffer. And
by managed to score, is that I stole?
No, I didn't steal. I got one. It was offered to me. I don't know if the way I was staring at it with this pathetic look on my face, like, oh. But Chris was very generous, and I also needed it for photos, a solo shot. But so it is just this little vinyl floor cutter thing, and.
So for the audio only podcast listening audience, it's like a little triangular shaped blade. Is it sharpened on both sides?
It is.
Cool.
Yep. He sharpened it with a little, he has that sharpening weird stuff article. So he has those little, sharpening oil stone rods that he used, and he used sandpaper backed board as well. But the engravings that he does with this thing are really cool. And you can fit this in a compass and draw curves and circles and half circles, and but you can also use it with a straight edge. And so I've just been kind of engraving with this little cutter just on boards. It's very satisfying, very cool.
On the kitchen table?
I was gonna say at the diner.
Just on little panels, just practicing with it right now.
loves engraver.
Hey, you're not allowed to make fun of my all-time favorite tool of today.
No, you're not, Ben.
I think it's all fair game.
Or me, maybe. You're probably right. But anyway, this thing is so fun and so satisfying, and you can make really intricate patterns, and it's cool. You should try it out.
And so that's covered in the upcoming issue of Fine Woodworking magazine. Spoiler alert. So
that's cool.
Yeah. That'll be out in February. If you're not an Unlimited member, sign up now, finewoodworking.com/unlimited. Or member. I don't know.
That was awesome.
I kind of forgot the URL there. Vic, what you got?
Mine is nothing new or nothing exciting, but for the last maybe year or so, I've been carrying a folding ruler around in my back pocket.
Of course you have.
And not because it goes with my hipster rolled up jeans and Blundstones, but and wool toque when it's 90 degrees out.
It's a beanie for those Americans.
Right. Did you like how I said 90 degrees? I spoke American there.
Oh, you said toque, though. So you're bilingual.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, so measuring tapes for what we do in a lot of cases are not accurate enough. And so like I use a measuring tape when I'm initially bucking a board to length. If I need like 12-inch long piece, I'm going to measure 13. I'm going to cut it. I have a little bit of room on either side. That's a measuring tape. That's about as good as I get with a measuring tape or am comfortable working with. But sometimes you need, like, if you're working on a piece that's like 2 feet long, let's say, and you need to like make a precise measurement, I won't use the measuring tape. I don't want 16 rulers kicking around the shop that are, all of, increments of 6 inches or whatever. So the folding rule, it's so quick and easy. It's in your back pocket or in your pouch or whatever, and you can unfold what you need. And then I find they work really well when you're like setting up like a bandsaw or whatever, because you can like put the tooth on the mark and then like set it up, and it's always in your pocket. But because it's a rule and not a tape, you can depend on it, you can trust it. And so I've been carrying that thing around now, and I'm like, this is like my new favorite thing to carry around, because like I can just quickly measure something. And then I have a little one that is only I think it's like 30 inches long or something like that. It's not but it's a metric one, not an imperial one. Or you can get those bilingual as well. One side is metric and one side is freedom units. But then the cool thing about that little one is that like I can put that in my little bag that I carry around with me. And then if I'm at the hardware store and I'm like looking at hardware, you know how sometimes like, oh yeah, this bin says there's 1.5-inch bolts in here, but some dork has taken the 1.25-inch ones and put them in there because they were put it back, and you get home and they're the wrong size, and then you start drinking, and it's just, anyway. if you have one of these little folding rules, well, now you can very accurately. And so that's been it's a dumb thing that's been around forever. And, I think Europeans tend to use them more than North Americans do. But I've been really seeing the value of that over. I used to always have like a 10-foot tape, like furniture makers, like a 10-foot tape is locked. That's all you need. I just don't trust them. I don't trust measuring tapes.
You make me want to try the folding rule again. I just felt like doot, 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 doot every time I unfolded it.
That's so satisfying, though. That folding and unfolding. No,
maybe
it's like putting a record on a record player. It's a process. It's a thing.
Yeah, sometime I'm drawn to it. Am I the only one who's, when I'm in the hardware store and I need to measure something, I just go take a tape measure off the shelf?
No,
I can't. I see that. I do that. I see it. But the problem is that like sometimes you're not in that section where there's a tape right there.
Oh, you're in too big of a hardware store then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe. But yeah, I just like, because the big ones are about, they're close to like 30 centimeters long or a foot long, and then they fold out to whatever. I've even got one that's like 5 meters. It's like folded up. It's like 18 inches long. And I found that one in Sweden. And this thing folds out to like 5 meters. That's a little excessive.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's excessive. Right. I get it. But I have it and it looks cool and I like it. But the one I've been carrying, and it's not even a wooden one. It's it's made out of like almost like a plastic or a Delrin or something like that. So you don't even have to worry about wood movement in the things, because I typically don't like wooden measuring things.
Mm.
Right? Squares and straight edges, because it's like, well, how do you know? Because wood moves. We know that part.
Yeah.
Right? Death, taxes, and wood movement. 3 things you can count on.
Huh.
And then, does yours have the little thing that comes out on the end so that you can do inside measurements? Okay.
No, because I find those get sloppy and they're not very accurate. See, like for me, the whole point of carrying it is to improve the accuracy.
Gotcha.
Right. If I have to check the depth of something, I keep a 1/8 inch by 6 inch long dowel in my pouch. And so then I can just stick it in there and then use my thumb as the stop. And it's like, okay, that's how long that is.
You do? That's like on your person in the shop. That's interesting.
Yeah, it works really well.
I want a little holster like you have for Vic, but I think I only want my calipers in it. I just want my calipers around all the time now. Okay. That put a halt to the conversation. So,
I was just contemplating your love for your calipers.
I love them.
Yeah. I was doing the same thing. I was like,
I love them.
Not the thing I want on me all the time.
And then I started thinking, what is the one thing that I would want on me all the time?
These Mitutoyo vernier calipers, they've been my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week before, but they're like, I don't even look for them. I know right where they are, even when they're not right there. If I know they're on the bed, that's whatever. All right. My all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is, I almost wanted to say it was my Makita trim router. But it is the second base I have for my Makita trim router. When I bought my CNC used, it came with a Makita trim router mounted in the CNC, and the guy had the box, and I was like, wow, he has the box for it. I'm going to throw that out immediately. And then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great if if the original base was in there? And it was. And so I have, I use that thing it's easily my most used router. But now I have one of the bases with a 3/4 inch bushing mounted in it. And it just lives that way. So if I want to do any
template
routing or any, I 3D print a lot of mortise templates, I just do it with that setting, and just change out the base and I'm ready to go. So at this point, I just about keep an 1/8 inch bit in that Makita router and that 3/4 inch bushing on there. And all of my templates are using those parameters, and it's just kind of always ready to go. But then if I need to do some flush trimming or something like that, I take that base off, I switch the bit, I put the other base on without the bushing on. And it's just like, everybody talks about how many routers you really want. You know, it'd be like in a perfect world, you'd have a router with this bit that lives in it and a router with that bit that lives in it. And I don't have the storage space or the finances for that, but the second base has really like made switching tasks on that tool so much easier. To the point where I wonder if they sell the bases separately, and I would recommend doing that. So
I was having that very same thought because I have a small, rigid laminate trimmer that got mounted into the bottom of this small router table that I made that was designed for a trimmer. Unfortunately, fortunately, I suppose you could say, the rigid is 20 years old and it's just starting now. It's not doing so good. And so I have a little DeWalt one that works on their battery system. And for that, I have a fixed base and a plunge base. And I thought, oh, well, what I'll do is I'll just take the fixed base from the DeWalt and mount it underneath the table. And then I can take the motor from that and put it into the plunge. And then I started thinking, well, but sometimes you don't want the plunge base. And so I was like, I wonder if you can buy just the fixed base for that router. And so we're going to have to do some research and find out if that's actually a thing. But
I wonder if like on eBay, especially because I think the Makita has kind of become synonymous with like small CNCs. It's like kind of the go-to.
Right. It's like what Porter Cable used to be. Yeah,
exactly. So I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are, you know, CNC primary woodworkers and wouldn't know what to do with a handheld router. And they probably just sit there and go like, I'll stick it up on eBay or something like that. But, or sadly, there's probably hundreds of them in the landfill. And I want all of them now.
Yeah. Well, if anybody out there listening has a spare DeWalt fixed base, message me, and Ben will pay you for it.
I'll do that. It's absurd enough. I'll do it. Sure.
Yeah.
I will foot the bill.
And then I'll have to come down and pick it up because that will be cheaper than mailing it from the US.
That's fine. All right. So this one we'll answer real quick. This one's from Bob. Is there a good way to provide dust control in a hand tool shop? I've moved all my power equipment to a separate building and only use hand tools in the main shop connected to my house. But I'm amazed by how much dust I still generate. It doesn't seem to be practical to attempt point of use suction like you might use with power tools. Besides, that would defeat the allures of hand tool use, the peace and quiet of no machines running. Any thoughts would be appreciated. Fancy broom. It's your chance to get a fancy broom, right, Anissa?
Yeah. Fancy brooms are great. Berea College.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I actually never. It never occurred to me to try and think about ways to control the dust or the shavings from handwork. Just pick it up after you're done, and that's kind of it. I mean, other than dust collection on a random orbital sander, I don't even think about how to minimize that debris from hand tools. You know, like if you're using a handsaw, you're getting a little pile there. You can clean it up as you go. That might be a good way. If you want to have a dedicated little shop vac right by your bench for when you're doing handwork and clean up in between.
That's what I have. I have, you know, my little tool island behind me, and my shop vac just kind of lives right on my bench, or the hose, and I have just like a Christmas light remote button
Yeah.
that I put on a strap around the end of the hose. And then Festool stole my idea because it was a very original idea, and they must have seen it on Instagram and said, like, we're going to make that fancy now. But no, and it's really convenient to have the hose right there. I saw Craig Thibodeau has like a foot switch to turn his shop vac on at his bench, and
That's cool.
that was a pretty
cool.
slick moment when I saw that. But we actually just recently had a workshop tip published that I was like, ooh, I might put that in the bench, because it's the shavings that are really an issue with shop vacs. They clog up really easily in that small hose. And somebody mounted a couple rails on the bottom of their workbench, and they have like a kitty litter bin.
Oh, and
that just pulls out from their workbench, and then just brush the shavings, the hand plane shavings in there,
right,
and then just shove it back in. And it was like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I like that.
And then what do you do with them?
You throw them out. But it's
now we have 2 steps.
Yeah, but if let's say you don't have the kitty pan on the rails,
then they just wind up on the floor. Then I push them off the bench onto the floor, and then I gotta
bend down and pick them up.
Yeah, and then I can't get
I have a little like garbage can right at the end of the bench.
Well, you're living in 2032.
I mean, yeah, I vacuum everything up. Like the hand plane shavings, I collect them with my hands, and I have one of those leaf bags, the organic waste leaf bags that everybody uses. And I just throw them into that, because I don't want them being diverted to the waste. I want them to turn into a compost. So I do that. And then I use a vacuum. I try not to broom or sweep very much, because otherwise you're just bringing more dust up into the air. Whereas if you vacuum, it takes care of it. And ever since I bought an inexpensive cyclone from Home Depot that you put on a 5-gallon bucket, I think they're like $30 or something. Almost everything gets diverted to that. And the shop vac filter has remained clean I've done this for a year now, and I haven't had to change my filter. So I actually upgraded to the HEPA filter, because, I don't want to do that when I'm going direct into the can, because then you're going to plug that thing up so fast.
Yeah.
And then it becomes useless, and then you're vacuuming the filter, and then what filters that? And but by having that very simple separator in between, like it diverts all the heavy shavings and all that stuff right into the 5-gallon bucket. And then when that gets full, I dump that into the leaf bag. And then once a week, our friendly neighborhood collectors come and take it away.
See, I always mean to compost all of my shop vac stuff, and then I'll be doing some metal work, something, and those little metal filings will be around, and I'll hesitate and go like, then you can't compost this bucket. And I go,
well, they must put it through a magnet or something before they.
Well, compost for me is just going to wind up in the backyard, and I don't know. I just feel like once there's metal shavings in there, I don't want it to get to the chickens or my dog, or I don't know. I feel like now this bucket's garbage. So.
But but the vacuum idea and having one co-located with your bench is good, because I remember Mark Harrell from who used to own Bad Axe Toolworks.
Yeah.
He had this very unique bench that he worked at when he was making saws, and he had this tiny little like half-gallon shop vac that lived there, because for him, like when he's filing teeth, like you can breathe that dust in very easily. And so he was always very fastidious about keeping that metal stuff out of the air and out of, so like But that's where I first saw having it co-located, and I just so happened that my festool extractor is close enough that it can service my main workbench and my MFT, so I can just, kind of use them. And then I have a 3D printed hose holder that like holds it on the side of the thing so that it's always within grasp. And so I vacuum everything. I try my best, even with like hand tools and stuff. I pick up the big stuff and then the big fluffy stuff that clogs 25 mil hoses, and then vacuum up the rest.
And that is one scenario where if you can swing it, the festool or the fine or one of the quieter vacuums is like a quality of life thing. There are, every time I turn on an actual, shop vac or rigid, like a shop vacuum, whatever, I'm always staggered by how loud they are.
They're louder than a router.
Yeah.
That wraps another episode of Shop Talk Live. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe, and be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. I always like to mention our Discord channel. It is a great way to connect with other woodworkers, and we just started a new channel on there called The Build Challenge. And so one of our Discord members had the idea to have a 1-month build challenge themed every month. We are going to be starting one February 1st. So if you'd like to get some feedback on projects and just build with a community, we're not treating it like a competition, just a fun way to encourage other woodworkers. Go give it a look, and it's a really great thing to be a part of in general. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.